Hey, this week on the 167, we're talking Elijah and Elisha and Eliba and Elijah. We're just talking about Elisha and Elijah, and we get to talk about Move on week 3. Thanks for joining us here at the 167. Hey, welcome to the 167. We are here today with Pastor Rick George.
Hey.
And Pastor Nick Magana.
What's up?
And so today we're talking more about Move. We're in week 3 of Move. And so we've been doing this for 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's been fun. I've enjoyed it. It's been, I've been preaching it for 3 weeks. We've been in it for like 3 months or 6 months, or this has been a long
7 years.
Oh yeah,
8
this
years,
has been
something.
percolating for a while. So
as we're going through to week 3, we were talking this week about Elijah and Elisha.
Yep.
And
Two different people.
2 different people. And I was taught as a kid how you remember which one was first is because it's alphabetical. If it's Elijah, that came before Elisha.
J before S.
Exactly.
Got it.
But I mean, like, how weird is that? Like, if you were like, this is Rick George, and eventually taking over for Rich George is Rich George. Like, that would be weird.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I don't know. So, as we're talking about this week, we're talking about legacy and about how God can use us even beyond our lifespan, even beyond what we're capable of ourselves. And so we're also talking about that moment that Elijah chose Elisha. And so one of the questions that we were talking about in Move in groups and in life groups and stuff is, what was a time in your life where you got chosen for something important and you kind of took an interest from, it's a hobby, it's a common interest, into, man, this is something that I took to the next level. Like,
Yeah.
what was a time in your life where that happened?
Like, I can point back over the years of a variety of different times that's happened in my life. So you go way back in the day.
In the hip hop scene?
Yeah, so back in the day, so the church that Trudy and I were attending with our kids, we were just serving, volunteering, finding things to do within the church, and we found ourselves kind of gravitating towards what we would call here at New Life the fit team, the welcome team. Making people feel comfortable, following up with people, that kind of thing, which then kind of led into helping with a discipleship process and small groups and establishing curriculum. And we just served, and we were a part of that ministry. And then one day I was approached by the pastor to say, hey, would you be interested in becoming like a volunteer? I love that. The volunteer, it was like a discipleship pastor. They called it the believer care pastor.
That really means free.
Yeah.
Yeah. Volunteer is just unpaid.
Yeah. So I was, okay. I felt honored. It was crazy that we're just, we're behind the scenes, we're doing things, serving, and then being asked to then step into a role of like a pastoral role, free pastoral role.
Free pastoral
yeah,
role.
so not being paid for it, but the honor of then wow, this is a huge step. Okay, so then fast forward a year or two, and just doing what we did and on a volunteer basis, and then being approached and saying, would you consider full-time? Would you leave your job that I'd been at for 15 years? Would you consider leaving that job and coming on full-time as the discipleship pastor?
Now, did they offer you full-time full pay, or was it full-time part pay, or full-time no pay?
It was full-time full pay, but the full pay was a lot less pay than I was making at my full-time job that I was currently at. Did not have the same kind of health benefits, did not have the 401k plan, did not have all of that, but it was full-time. I still remember.
Did the pastor come and throw his suit coat over you, like the mantle of?
It wasn't quite that dramatic,
Okay.
but the full-time pay, I still remember. I made $35,000 a year, leaving my job making more than that. But taking this position, $35,000 a year would have been, I think, 1997 or 8. So it was not terrible money. We could live, but I wasn't getting rich.
Yeah.
And then, so I didn't do it it was just that honor of, I've been preparing for this. Okay, so, and then fast forward a little bit, and then being approached by someone else that I knew about, respected, but didn't know him personally, being approached by him and asked if I would consider being the pastor of this church now that I do pastor. And then
How did that turn out?
So far, it's been really good.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
I've enjoyed it. And then fast forward even more, one day being approached by the fire chief, here in South Johnson County in Gardner, and the fire chief approaching me and saying, "Hey, I respect you. I see what you do. Would you ever consider being a chaplain for the fire district?" And I was honored. It was like, wow, I've never done that before. But then I stepped into that. So I can look back multiple times in my life where I've been approached by someone that I respected and honored that was in a position of authority, who came to me, recognized just faithfulness and obedience, and saying, "Would you consider doing this?"
Well, I think that's interesting too, because when you talk about that chain of events, it's very clear that it's like, if you had not said yes to the first thing,
Right.
obviously you would not be the fire chaplain, nor would you be the senior pastor here. It's
Exactly.
like, it's those saying yes to God, how it kind of snowballs into more and more and more responsibility.
Yeah. So when I said yes to being the volunteer, unpaid pastor of discipleship, I had no plans whatsoever. I never crossed the radar of being a senior pastor. That was not part of the plan.
There's some multiverse out there where you're still working at a trucking company, probably making better money. But what about you, Pastor Nick?
I have a similar story, but mine started out with the opposite answer. Actually, when I was 17 years old, something like that, I was on a missions trip, and I had this, we were sitting at dinner, and there was this obnoxious 15-year-old kid from some other state. I don't even remember what his name was. And he comes walking over to me, like as I'm eating, and he goes, "Hey, Nick, I wanted to tell you, God told me to tell you, you're going to be a pastor." And I looked at him, I said, "You're nuts. I will never be a pastor because they don't make any money, and I'm going to make
True story.
money." I had my life planned out. Like, I was going to school, I was going to study genetics and law. And I was going to become a genetic lawyer before genetic lawyers were a thing.
I would 100% watch that show. Nick Magana, genetic lawyer.
It was like, I had to plan it out. I was like, this
DNA is out of order.
100%. I was like, and it's now a thing. Like,
Yeah.
doctors and lawyers who defending these cases. And I was like, I'm going to do this. And like,
They probably make more money, but they have more debt. They're a lot more
they have a lot
school.
more-
It's
yeah.
like,
A lot more stress and stuff.
whatever.
So it fast forward a few years, and I was taking my little brother to youth group. And to get him to youth group, the church we were at didn't have its own building, so they were using a space at a high school, but it was up in Kansas City, Kansas. We lived out in Olathe, so it was like a 45-minute drive to get him to youth group. And I would take him to youth group, and I was like, I can either drive back to Olathe and then turn around and immediately drive back up there, or I can just sit in the back of the room and wait. So I would just sit in the back of the room and wait. And the youth/children's pastor at the time was sitting there, and he saw me sitting in the back of the room, and he comes walking back to me one day. He goes, "Well, you're sitting back here. You want to be like a volunteer or a sponsor or something?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. Maybe." He's like, "Well, I need somebody to go with me to camp and like go to camp with the kids. Would you do that?" He's like, "It's a free trip to Colorado." And I'm like, "Well, free trip to Colorado, whitewater rafting. Yes, of course I would do that." And so I went on that trip. And that was his hook. Like, I said yes to that one thing because I wanted to go whitewater rafting. It had nothing to do with the kids. I didn't care anything about the kids. It was my brother and his friends, and I tormented them the entire time.
Can I have my own raft where I don't have to be with these kids?
It was 100%. From that led me into becoming an intern, which once again is just, very underpaid position at the time. It was, we're going to pay you 10 hours a week, but we need you to work 40. I mean, that's what it was. And from
Which
there,
is when I first met you, when you were terrorizing me, and I was on staff at that same church.
Yep.
In between, before I came to New Life, and
Intern Nick.
yeah,
Little
and
known
intern
fact.
Nick would tape my desk drawer shut every week, and I couldn't get it open.
back when Pastor Rick and I shared an office. I mean, and
Oh
a desk.
man.
Oh yeah, he filled my desk drawer full of golf balls, taped it shut. I couldn't get it open, and so I yanked it and got it open, and golf balls were bouncing everywhere. So thank you very much, Pastor Nick.
You have no concrete evidence that was me.
To this day, Pastor Rick does not have any drawers in his office.
Love keeps no record of wrong, so I barely remember that.
But really, that was the that one yes to a trip was the door that opened. Like it led from being an intern to being an assistant youth pastor to being the youth pastor to me getting married, stepping out of ministry for a season, coming to New Life, and then God calling me back into ministry. But it was with kids this time, and I had never served with kids. And, serving under Mike Garland when he was here, and eventually, lo and behold, I am here because I said yes one day to going whitewater rafting.
It's that Elisha example, just being faithful, just doing what's in front of you, like it works out. It
Absolutely.
does.
I remember mine when I was thinking about this. I was talking to my life group about it. Was, and I think I've told this story before. I was like 14, 15 years old. I was at my dad's church. We didn't have a youth pastor. We just had volunteers, people that were taking care of the church and the youth group. And there was this guy that he would run this program called Friday Night Live, and it was every Friday night. Like sometimes you base it around football games, but it was just every Friday night during the school year for us. He would open the church. We would play basketball in the fellowship hall and put holes in the walls. Like it was terrible. Like the adults hated us. We broke a few commemorative plates. So
Somebody donated those.
it got to the point where like if they really wanted to get rid of something in the church, they would just claim that we broke it at Friday Night Live and throw it out. But so he wanted to have, like, we would do that, and then he'd come in and give a gospel message to the kids that were there. And he's like, man, we need worship for this. And he looks at me and like, my brother was savant at playing piano and leading worship and stuff like that. And he looked at me, he's like, you need to figure out we need worship. And I was like, I took like 2 years of piano lessons and quit. And then I took a year of drumming in 5th grade band. And he's like, well, you got to figure it out. And I was like, and he just tasked me with that. It was like, I don't have any of the skills, whatever. And so I started taking guitar lessons from this guy who was a bluegrass guitar player. And he was like, well, what do you want to learn to play? And I was like, I need 4 chords so I can play worship songs, and so like, as I'm taking guitar lessons, I'm standing up, leading worship, like, that really awkward moment where you like strum one chord and then you go and you rearrange your fingers and then strum. Like that's how it started.
You needed tracks.
Oh man, if we had tracks, would have been a game changer back then. But you just didn't have anything. Like my guitar didn't even plug in, and so it started that way. And by the end of it, I was doing the youth band and stuff like that, and we were leading worship on Sunday mornings. And then of course, I went to college and I majored in preaching. But all of the things that I did was I led worship for a parachurch organization that did youth ministry. And then after that, when I came back to work for my dad, I ended up leading worship basically as a full-time job for 12 years. And it was like the whole time, people would be like, oh, you're a musician. I'm like, no, my brother is the musician. And like, I was usually the worst person in the band when I was leading worship. It was just the organization of it and like bringing people together and doing that. And so it was really that moment where I'm like, I'm plowing the field with 0 skills. And it's like, hey, I need you to come do this thing. And I'm like, like, I don't know, I'm farming. But like in that moment where Elisha does that, like I said, he's farming, he's plowing, he's got oxen. And then he has this really weird response where first he says, hey, let me go back. I'm going to kiss my mom, and then Elijah says, do whatever you want, but I want you to think really hard about what I just did for you, because he throws his mantle on him. And then in response, he chops up the plow, butchers his oxen, cooks the meat as an offering to God, gives it to the people, and then, does this little thing where he puts his stick with the little, his little hobo stick and walks out. And so when you think about that, what is that? Like, why are we preaching that during Move? Like, what is the response that we're hoping for? What inspires you about that moment?
We all have a tendency to hang on to the things that make us comfortable, hang on to the things that we know, hang on to the things that we believe that we're good at, and we just, it's just what we do. And that's not God's plan most of the time. God's plan generally is, hey, here's where you are for a season, and do what you're doing now, do it well, but be ready for the next thing. Be ready when I call you to this new assignment, this bigger role, more responsibility. And we hesitate to do that, all of us. Like it's I don't know that I can do this, and I'm not the guitar player. I'm not the best at this. When God called me to lead, I couldn't lead myself. I didn't know, like I was terrible at leading. Like I was uncomfortable speaking to people. I had this mentality of like, who am I? Like, I don't know anything. I struggled with my level of intelligence. I didn't have a college degree at that time that I was asked to lead. I'd gone to college a couple of years, did not have a degree. So like I had all these self-doubts and like, why would he ask me to do that? They're more qualified. They can do it better. I think everyone kind of struggles with that at some level. And so we want to stay where we are. And God's like, no, be ready, because when the blessing comes, when the call comes, when the mantle is put on you, you got to be ready to move.
Well, it really puts flesh on that. The scriptures where it talks about basically in our weakness is his strength made perfect. Like, I think that's so true. And yet, like, a lot of times we think of that in a really abstract, nebulous, spiritual sentence, like that. No, I don't have a college degree in this area. Well, we want you to do this in the area. Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
so when I realized, like they're asking me to step up and begin leading, that means I have to lead. I have to speak to people. I have to communicate. I was terrible at that. And so what I did, and that's why I speak about John Maxwell so often, like I found some John Maxwell tapes, cassette tapes back in the day. And so like I found these cassette tapes. Someone said, hey, John Maxwell's great. I said, all right. And I listened to it, and it literally rocked my world. And it just resonated with me. And I just listened to them. And I tried to be him. Like I mimicked him in some ways. Like I found VHS tapes. And oh
my gosh.
I know, I'm telling you.
You are really dating yourself here.
Let me take an aside to tell some of our listeners, there used to be these things where it was like reel to reel. Like it was a ribbon that would play sounds. That's what we were listening to.
Yeah. And then they upgraded, and I started getting these DVDs, right? That I could put in and watch, and I would like how he communicated. And I just watched it, and I learned, and I grew, and God used that in my life to equip me to lead. But I had to do the work. I had to just keep doing it, doing it.
And what would you say, either that time or when you came to New Life, what was the thing that you burned?
Well, back then I burnt my job. Right. Like I quit. I quit my job.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, hey, I'm going to go try this for a couple months, and if I can come back. Nope. It was, I quit, and I'm not coming back. So that was a big deal.
What about the move to Gardner?
So the move to Gardner. So again, 15 people here. They could not pay me a full-time salary. Mm-hmm. So it was, we can't pay you. We sold our house in Lenexa. We had the option.
You didn't burn it down. You sold it.
So, and we sold it to Tim and Suzanne Felks. Thank you very much.
Shout out to Tim and Suzanne Felks.
So Tim and Suzanne were, they're incredible people, part of our church family now, but they were moving here from Arkansas. Long story. But anyway, we had the option. We can live in Lenexa and try to build a church in Gardner and just drive back and forth.
That way, in case it doesn't work out, you haven't...
Exactly. I haven't sold the house. We'll see how it goes. We prayed and said, that is not an option. Mm-hmm. We put our house on the market. It sold the first day. Tim and Suzanne saw it, bought it. We had to find a house in Gardner. We made an offer on a house, a foreclosure. They took it, and we hit the ground running and saying, this has to work. We do not have a plan B. I didn't have another job. Trudy was a stay-at-home mom that was working part-time at Bot Radio Network. So she was working in the accounting department part-time at Bot Radio, just trying to, fill in some of the gaps in our finances at that time. So there was no plan B. It was, boom, here we go. And because of that, we were very passionate about what we were doing.
What about you, Pastor Nick? What about that moment do you resonate with?
The first thing, like when I'm listening, I hear that story and I think about it, it reminds me of Cortez when he was taking his conquistadors into Mexico. I mean, it was a real jerk move by him, but like he gets these guys from Spain, gets them to Mexico, pulls up on the shores, and then burns their boats and says, "You have nowhere to go but forward."
Yeah.
Because you can't go home because it's been burnt. Mm-hmm. And really, that is what Elisha was doing. I mean, slaughtering his oxen and burning the plows and everything, he just destroyed his livelihood.
Right.
Like, replacing oxen was a huge deal. Like, that was an enormous sacrifice. He was essentially saying, I am leaving myself with nowhere to go but forward in the way that God's taking me. And I look at it, I'm like, really, that's the mindset like I need to have as we go into move, is if God is calling us to move forward and to move in this new direction into the vision he has given to Pastor Rick, then we as a church, really, it's almost we have to burn the plows and the oxen. And it might mean burning some traditions or things that we hold dearly to, or things we're comfortable with, or, what feels like home, but knowing that God is calling us to something greater.
Well, and I think that's a really hard thing. And I think we talked about this over the last 2 weeks is, there's nothing wrong with making a living with oxen and, with the plow. And I'm going, there are things that we do here currently that we just know, okay, if we move and we grow as a church, we're going to either have to do them differently or we're going to have to scrap it and do something else that's more effective. And it doesn't mean that those things aren't good. It just means that that's not where God's taking us.
Yeah, and there's a big difference, and I hope everyone understands there's a difference between burning the plows, killing the oxen, and burning bridges of relationship.
100%.
So we're not saying you burn all your bridges and you just, relational bridges are important, and you don't want to burn those bridges, but sometimes you do have to analyze some of the bridges that you're connected to, and you might have to burn a couple of those bridges so you don't go back to an old life, an old relationship, an old pattern. You might have to burn some of those, but don't just, take from this message that I have to burn all the relationships and burn everything that, burning bridges sometimes is a bad thing.
Yeah, because how else are you going to get people to come with you?
Yeah. So
it's all about family.
Yeah.
It's all about family.
Is that a movie reference?
Fast and Furious.
100%.
reference.
Oh, okay.
All right, last question, and then we'll end with this. I love this story that when Elijah takes Elisha with him and he says, hey, I'm going to leave you. What do you want? And he's like, I want a double portion. It's like dun, dun, dun. And he goes, and Elijah says, I don't know if you want that, man, because not all of what I have is, wine and roses. It's not rainbows and sunshine. Like, he was pursued by kings. He was, and so, but Elisha's like, no, man, I'm in. I want double the portion. So kind of a fun question. First of all, what would you want a double portion of if you got an opportunity to do that? Like, is it Michael Jordan's basketball skills? Is it Jeff Bezos' resources?
Pastor Rick's good looks.
Oh, yeah. Who wouldn't want to be double that? Double that. Yeah.
Brownie points.
Brownie points.
No, not really.
What about you, Pastor Rick?
I had this conversation with someone recently about, what would you want more than anything? And it was interesting. They're learning to play the guitar. Mm-hmm. And so they said, I know this is going to sound really selfish, but I would love a double portion of Jeff Beck's ability to play the guitar.
Would you even be on this planet?
Yeah. And I said, then what would you do with that? And they're like, and then I could serve, like I would be on the worship team and it would just be incredible. And I said, that is incredible. That's awesome. Are you willing to do what Elisha did and follow Jeff Beck for 13 years, live with him, eat with him, listen to him, do everything he tells you to do? Are you willing to invest your life into Jeff Beck's ministry, it's really not a godly ministry, but into his skill set, learning everything so that you can do that. And he's like, no.
Yeah.
So for me, I started, when he said that, I started thinking about, all right, who wouldn't want double Jeff Bezos's resources? I don't know. What's his recent net worth? Billions? I don't know.
Billions upon billions.
It's outer space billions. I get
Yes.
to go to outer space for funsies.
Yeah, so even, I don't even know what it is now. 50 billion?
I have no
100,
idea.
I don't know.
20
No,
billion,
it's
whatever
like-
it is.
It's like 500 billion, something
Yeah,
crazy.
whatever. It's just stupid numbers, right? So if you had double that, could you change the world? And I'm thinking you could impact. I don't know that you could change the world with money. I don't think money changes the world. So I don't know if that's what I would want. To sound real spiritual, Solomon had it right, man. He just nailed it. Wisdom. Man, if you could have a double portion of Solomon's wisdom, then everything else is going to just fall into place. You're going to have the resource. You're going to have the money. You're going to have everything.
3,000 wives.
Well, okay.
That sounds no. No.
So, yeah, I don't know. When
Well,
you
let me
think of
ask-
a double portion, there's a huge responsibility that comes with the double of anything.
Well, let me ask it to you this way then. So when we go over there as a church, what are you hoping to see a doubling in our ministry? Like, what's the double portion of our church that you want to see?
Yeah, I just want to see a doubling of the impact in Gardner. Lives changed, salvations.
So double the salvations.
Double salvations, triple. I don't even want double. I want like if we just move to a new building and everything stays status quo, not good.
Yeah.
Not good.
What do you
I'll
want to
say-
see, Pastor Nick?
I think it would be the doubling, and kind of like what Pastor Rick said, but like a doubling of our heart and ability to reach out and serve the community, because I think you have exponential impact when that happens. Is people's heart to serve and reach the people who are lost, then it's not just a doubling of salvations. It's a doubling that then pours into other people, then doubles, and then doubles, and then doubles.
Yeah.
And it's really the ability to change an entire community around us. And like you said, that isn't done
Yeah.
through, it's not done just through throwing money at people. It's through the heart that people are using to reach out and serve the people around them.
Exactly.
Well, and I would love to see us in that same vein, kind of that thing where there are people that we get to help and it's like, oh, this is really easy to help you. And there are other people that we have to literally change the circumstances in which they find themselves in. And that takes, a whole life group to rally around one person. It takes 5 or 6 people to, in Embrace Grace to bring one mom through that experience. And it's like, I think that if we're doubling our portion in that area, it's more and more people that we can change their spiritual landscape in their life. We can change all these different things, but we can literally take someone who is drug addicted, in poverty, someone who is hopeless, and move them into a season,
Right.
where they're, they've got a healthy family, they're ministering to other people, and like really see that like life change over like 10 years kind of a thing.
Yep. And the only way that happens is when collectively we as a family, as the body of Christ, are just faithful to continue doing what God has called us to do for as long as he's called us to do it. We're just, we're doing the hard work and preparing for what he has for us next.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us this week on the 167. We hope to see you next week when we're doing week 4 of Move.
Yeah.
See you next week. Hey, welcome back to the 167. We're here with 7-Minute Stories with Tammy Seehafer. How you doing, Tammy?
I'm good.
Good?
I'm wonderful.
Awesome. So we're going to share a little bit about your story, about your journey with Christ, and we're going to see where this goes.
All right.
Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. All right. You can just start wherever you'd like to start, and we'll jump in and see what happens.
Okay. I was thinking about this when you asked me to do it and realized that I'd been imagining that I didn't start back toward the Lord until after my mom passed away, but that's not true. My journey back toward the Lord started when I went to live with my mom to take care of her. She wasn't well for the last year or 2 of her life. And I also got to fellowship with my sisters, which was amazing. One of them is responsible for leading me to the Lord. and hopefully we'll be responsible for leading the other one to the Lord. So I was saved when I was about 14 years old and spent 18 or 19 years in a Baptist church, which I'm finding wasn't a typical Baptist church because the things I've been hearing about Baptists aren't very nice.
We love the Baptists.
Everybody does. But I got some really sound teachings there, I think.
That's good.
And I spent many years trying to be a good, godly woman and submissive wife until I decided that God wasn't working fast enough or didn't care, and I got angry and left everything about my Christian walk. I just said, forget it, I'm not doing it anymore, and went out into the world and did all the crazy stuff that people in the world do. But even through that, the Lord had his hand in my life, and I can look back now and see it. And had I been honest with myself, I would have known that also, that he was always there and protecting me and guiding me anyway.
I think that's a really common thread with people where it's like they say that, well, I came back to Christ here. And then you look at it and go, man, he was pulling me back for years.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many things that could have happened that didn't. It is just, and miraculous things that should have probably happened that didn't. So I'm grateful. And one of the things, I have dealt with fear in my life, my whole life. I've always been anxious and afraid. And through the political atmosphere and COVID and different things that were happening in my family and in my life, fear was just absolutely overwhelming me. It was unbearable. It was horrible. I couldn't sleep. I would like to say I couldn't eat, but I overeat when I'm upset, so that's what I did. And it was just horrible. And the Lord had been speaking to me. Well, I'd been listening in bits and pieces. He'd been speaking to me all along. But finally, one day, he said, give up. I'm here to take care of you if you'll let me. And I finally said, okay, I'm done. I can't handle this anymore. Please take this fear away and help me. And I got such an amazing peace and an understanding that God is ultimately in control and can work all things together for good. And right after that, he, through several small adjustments and tiny miracles, brought me to this church where when I walked in the door, I felt like I was home. Although it's incredibly different than a small Baptist church with 50 people.
We're a little bit different than that.
And it took me a little while to learn to navigate here. But when I first came back to the Lord, he gave me this incredibly strong desire to be of service. I didn't know how or what I was supposed to do, but I wanted to serve. And then I was getting frustrated and angry because I couldn't find a way to do that. And I realized that the Lord kept saying, okay, just rest, wait, learn, get comfortable again.
Yeah.
And when he finally opened the door for me, I'm meeting all kinds of new people and doing all kinds of things. And actually what happened was I was sitting at home praying again and begging God to please show me what I'm supposed to be doing and to give me some indication. And the prompt for Volunteers for Vacation Bible School came up on my phone. And I thought, but I don't want to do that. I'm not good with kids.
Lord, give me a sign, not that
Yeah,
sign.
not that one. I don't like that one. And I did not volunteer for Vacation Bible School, but the Lord kind of slapped me on the back of the head and said, look, you have opportunities every day to do things for me and to serve. It doesn't have to be in a specific way or with a name on it or anything else. And so since then, whenever I get a prompt, I've been volunteering and doing the best I can to serve any way I can until the Lord finds a more specific way for me to do that. So that's my story so far.
That's great. And you're attending the women's Bible study on Wednesdays?
I am. I'm computer illiterate and technology illiterate, so it's really difficult for me. But when I found on the app where it talked about life groups and stuff, I went through and was trying to study and find a life group to get involved in. And I think one of my daughter's friends actually goes to the Bible study, and I went there. And then I, through one of the ladies at the Bible study, started going to the seniors meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm going to join another life group also. So I'm just going to join everywhere and do everything.
Filling up on that schedule, man.
So I went from having nothing to do and being bored and feeling useless to probably taking on more than I can handle, but the Lord's going to take care of it for me. So I don't think I've done anything that I wasn't supposed to yet.
His grace is sufficient even when that happens. But yeah, man, like I said, I love hearing your story, and I think it's just incredible and powerful to see you, like you said, try and get involved and see you grow in that way. So I appreciate you coming and talking about it.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
We'll see you guys next time here on the 167. If you enjoyed this episode of the 167, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, get notified, leave a 5-star rating and a positive review. Tell all your friends to listen as well. Make sure you go over to newlifegardner.com and check out all that we have to offer as a church, and check out our messages online as well. Thanks for listening.